everyone, and welcome to another episode of Speak, Film, and Enter, a podcast where we review and rank movies. I'm Nate.
And I'm Dylan.
Today, we are reviewing the new A24 movie from Charlotte Wells, Aftersun, which is just out in a limited release right now, kind of slowly trickling its way into movie theaters after debuting at some festivals.
Yep.
And getting very, very big buzz out of those festivals. Dylan and I were lucky enough to see it at one of them at the Twin Cities Film Festival a couple of weeks ago. And because it's finally starting to find its way out for the public, general public to consume, we thought now would be a good time to get the review out there. So, Dylan, would you like to tell the people what Aftersun is about?
Yeah, absolutely. We're contributing to the buzz on this show.
Yes, absolutely.
Aftersun. Sophie reflects on the shared joy and private melancholy of a holiday she took with her father 20 years earlier. Memories, real and imagined, fill the gaps between as she tries to reconcile the father she knew with the man she didn't. Pretty good description.
Yeah, I think so. And we should say about one thing that threw me a little bit after watching it and just like reading the synopsis. I'd say 98% of this movie takes place during that trip.
Yeah.
I feel like it kind of presents itself as something where there's going to be like mostly flashbacks, but like 20 minutes or so of like quote unquote present day. There's really not much of that at all. And what there is, some of it's kind of borderline surreal. You can't quite tell if it's literal or in somebody's head.
Yep.
But the vast majority of the movie is just this trip that she takes with her father when she's 10 years old and he's 30, 31.
Something like that, yeah.
Right in that range. Father played by Paul Mescal, who some of you might recognize he was in The Lost Daughter. Was that last year or 2 years ago? I think that was last year. That was last year with Olivia Colman and Dakota Johnson and Jesse Buckley. That was, I think, on some of our top 10 movies of 2021. He was also the co-lead in the Hulu miniseries Normal People, based off the very popular Sally Rooney sort of millennial dating novel. So he kind of burst onto the scene with Normal People, and he started to get himself almost kind of like Lucas Hedges to me in a way, where they just kind of find their ways into like really, really good projects with really smart scripts.
Yeah.
And, you know, like indie A24 stuff.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. I wouldn't have thought that, but yeah, you're right.
I thought of it literally just as I was speaking. It wasn't anything I had planned before the episode started.
I imagine you have a whole notebook of notes in front of you whenever you do these.
Yeah, it's really.
But and speaking, and also just where is our boy Lucas Hedges? I haven't seen him pop up in a while.
It has been a little while, that's true. But back to Paul Mescal here and Frankie Corio, who plays Sophie. This was her first movie ever. Very impressive. I mean, one thing that I think stands out to me right away about this is the insanely good chemistry between Paul Mescal and Frankie Corio. The father-daughter relationship here is so like gently handled. Nothing's forced upon them or upon the audience. This isn't the type of movie that's going to kind of have big flashing lights when they're having an important moment. You know, it feels very real, like you're really experiencing this trip with them, and kind of there are times when you don't feel like you necessarily know where it's going, or when you feel like it might not be going anywhere.
Yep.
And it's almost like Linklater-ish in that way, although Linklater, despite making movies I think that are kind of, you know, this sort of slice of life style stuff, his movies always have a forward momentum to them, despite a lot of their kind of laid back in the moment feel. Aftersun, though, just has moments where they just let you kind of sit with them and you don't really know where it's going to go, if the scene's going to turn into anything huge, or if one of them's just going to say, I'm bored, and jump in the pool all of a sudden. Like it's such a quiet, calm relationship that they have, but with a 10-year-old girl, and it can just kind of flip on a dime.
Yep.
Depending on how one of them is feeling at any given moment.
Yeah, and I really loved how it felt like you said, they handled everything kind of so like gently, and everything was very like nuanced, and it isn't like your just classic stereotypical like father daughter relationship where they are, it's just perfect and they love each other. And it's also not one where it's like terrible and they're abusive or anything. It's just it's a more realistic like gray area in between where like obviously they love each other, but it's also kind of established like they're not living together, and like this vacation is kind of his chance to like spend some time with her, and like they're both very very excited, but like he has his own things that he's going through, and she's at an age where she like a lot she's also going through a lot of things, and so it's like it's very yeah, it's just very like nuanced, and a lot of that is like shown, not told, almost like
Yeah,
their relationship.
yeah, absolutely. I like how you bring up how kind of they both have these changes that they're trying to work through. Like she's getting older. There are
Mm-hmm.
teenage girls and like teenage boys at the resort that they're staying at. And there are just moments where she kind of watches them and sees
Yeah.
them do something. And then like 10 minutes later, or like the next day in the movie, you'll see her kind of try to do something similar. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of that kind of stuff where it's nothing's stated, and like Charlotte Wells isn't holding your hand through this. She kind of expects you
No.
to just pick it up. And I think
Yeah.
for the most part, it's pretty simple to just pick up what's happening, but you do need to pay attention, or you might think like, oh, why is she wearing her swimsuit under her clothes now?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you just kind of miss a subtle moment where she just sort of looks and sees that like a high school girl is doing that. So like maybe I'll try that. And
Yep.
these things happen, a lot of these little decisions and moments just happen in the character's head. And like when the camera gives us kind of their perspective on something for like 10 seconds sometimes. And
Mm-hmm.
then that causes like a little shift in their behavior, which then the dad or the daughter will kind of play off.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all just handled really, really well and in a really smart way. And the way that just how comfortable again the two actors are with each other, I think it would
Yeah.
not have worked nearly as well as it does had they not had
Mm-hmm.
the chemistry that they had.
Agreed. And also I think that like we were talking about the way that the writing and the characters are and the character relationship is handled, I also feel like the plot is very similar, where like the moments that are the quote unquote big moments are like just are sometimes not what you would expect, or they're unexpected moments that like you can tell are impactful, but maybe they didn't mean them to be. Like just like maybe like the dad, like he's in his own head. He's kind of not feeling the greatest, and he just wants to go home and go back to the hotel room. And she's like, "Well, I want to stay here." And it's like you can tell that like he's not really realizing the impact that like that's going to have on her later. Like this is one of those memories of this whole trip that she's going to have, is when he just decided to go to the hotel and she just was on her own. Like, but he's just so caught up in his own head that he just wants to go to the hotel and just like relax and just like get away from whatever is going on in his head. And it's just interesting how it's like the big moments are not necessarily like things that a movie would normally be built around.
Well, and I like that you bring that up, and I like that point because this movie is about memory.
Yeah.
And it intercuts a lot of like home video footage from this trip that I think, at least my take was that those are the moments when we're technically no longer in the past. We're like watching the home footage with like adult Sophie.
Okay. Yeah.
That's how I took that. It's a little hard to tell, and it could just work as like kind of here's the real stuff, and here's kind of her memory of it after
Mm-hmm.
that. That's kind of how I took all that. And that's how a lot of that goes, where you don't like sometimes looking back on moments, you just realize that you remember weirdly specific stuff that
Yes.
didn't seem important to you at all in the moment. It wasn't the big event of the trip.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, you played doubles pool with your dad against two high school boys when you
Yeah.
were 10. And
Yeah.
like you didn't go there to do that. It wasn't a planned thing. You just
Yeah.
kind of remember that for some reason, and you can't necessarily explain why. But I
Mm-hmm.
think this movie, and I just actually rewatched Boyhood. I think there are elements of Boyhood in this as well, because that's specifically supposed to be, Linklater designed that movie to be like a person's memories of growing up.
Yeah.
And this movie
Interesting.
does that as well, where you just get these beautiful little moments that seemingly meant nothing at the time. And now it's like one of her clearest memories of her dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I really like the way they did that. And I do want to talk about the dad, the father character, Paul Mescal's here a little bit, Callum, where he's really fascinating because you can tell he's a good person and he's trying really hard to be a good dad. They don't totally, Charlotte Wells doesn't give us a full explanation of kind of why they separated.
Yeah.
But he does tell his daughter that, like, yeah, your mother and I still love each other. And she kind of asks, well, then why don't you live together anymore? And he doesn't necessarily have an answer for that he wants to give to a 10-year-old. But as we see in the movie, she's starting to mature in ways that he's not quite ready for or expecting yet.
Yeah.
But you see these little moments, these like cracks where he just kind of runs out of, I'd say, more emotional than physical energy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
He just reaches points where he needs quiet and solitude. And there are moments when you can see him trying to battle through that because he knows that this is like some of the only time he gets with his daughter, and he doesn't want to spend some of it sitting by himself in a hotel room while she's at the pool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there are times when it becomes too strong for him and he needs to just clear his head and clear the air and just step away for a moment. It's never like he's never loud about it or necessarily like intentionally rude about it or anything. But there's I think you and I talked about this after we walked out of the showing, where there's this just very difficult scene with karaoke involved that just kind of makes you go like, dude, come on.
Yeah.
But we've seen him kind of power through some of those things before during the course of the movie. And then just whether it's a combination, whether it was just too much for him or just a combination of, God, I've already powered through stuff I don't feel comfortable doing like 9 times in the last 3 days, and I just can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
It's hard to say exactly what it is, but for whatever reason, there are a couple moments where he just reaches that point. Or like when he's buying a rug. That one was a fascinating scene to me too.
Yeah, it's like we see him, it's like he's fighting through it and also succumbing to it, like, throughout the day, and as we see, as we get to day 3 or day 4 of the trip, it's like you can tell he's succumbing to it more than fighting through it, but he still wants to. It's mostly he's a man in turmoil, in mental kind of emotional turmoil, and he's really trying his best. And I think that in that way, this movie, I'm sure, speaks to parents, young parents out there, who they are trying their best but probably have a lot of doubts about themselves, and life is very heavy and hard. And I like that this felt just like a very realistic depiction of like a dad who's like trying his best, maybe losing his grip on it a little bit, but like it's so like bittersweet. Like this whole movie is very bittersweet from like start to finish.
Yeah, it's kind of got this aura of like, I don't want to say tragedy to it.
Yeah,
but there's something about it when you're watching it that it feels like this is maybe as good as it got between the two of them. That's never overtly stated, but you do get that feel as the movie goes along that she's kind of searching for, like, where did it maybe start to go wrong, or what were the best moments? And was that trip when I was 10 years old it?
Yeah.
And kind of back to your point just a second ago about like, yeah, new parents just trying to fight through it. I think this movie handles mental illness in a wonderful way. There's a really nice or really interesting scene where Sophie kind of says something that sounds like maybe she's starting to experience some issues with depression.
Yeah.
And just the look on her dad's face when she kind of lets slip just this little comment that she makes about how, like, you get to the end of a day where it seemed like everything was good, and then you're just like exhausted and you feel kind of sad. That's not verbatim, but that's just kind of the gist of what she said. And he just has this look of like almost horror
Mm-hmm.
in his eyes of like, oh my God, she's going to be like me. And then also just people who do deal with depression who are afraid of having kids for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
that's
Good
another
point.
area where this movie, you can feel
Mm-hmm.
everything that he's feeling without him having to vocalize this. It's a wonderful performance.
Yeah.
And I just think, again, I mean, both of them together, fantastic. One of the best kid performances I've seen in a really long time, I think.
Agreed.
But just that age, which he's basically the same age we are now, and he has a 10-year-old kid. And
Yeah.
there's just this moment where she asks him, like, what did you think your life was going to be like when you were my age? I think is what she says. And
Yeah,
you
and
can
she has
tell that,
asks it in a very positive tone, like
yeah.
almost like a "What'd you want to be when you grew up?" Like, just like a interesting question.
And you can almost see this look on his face of like, oh, this was back before I was just sad all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
also, it almost feels on the tip of his tongue like he almost wants to say, like, well, I sure as hell didn't think I would have a 10-year-old kid when I was 31. I don't
Yeah.
think he'd mean that in a bad way either, because he clearly loves his daughter and cares about her a lot.
Yeah.
But there's just an element of it where you can tell not any of it really is quite what he expected.
Mm-hmm. And I love how it's the movie's able to convey all these emotions without ever telling us specifically how he got to where he's at.
Yes.
There's no exposition or wasted time with like and then I lost my job and then I started gambling at the track and then I start like there's none of like
Right.
they leave it up to our imagination what his trials and tribulations are that have gotten him to this point. But that's so effective because then it's easy to relate to him and to like this situation.
Absolutely. And I think it makes it easy to believe him when he tells his daughter that his mother and he still love each other. You
Mm-hmm.
can kind of tell that he just like he can't make it work all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
He has these like peaks and valleys, and the valleys just weren't, they were too big for him to stay in that marriage and
Mm-hmm.
to be a full-time dad. And you can see like that's where the bittersweet stuff comes in again with this movie, where he's trying to experience all the good stuff at the same time while knowing that he's not getting as much of it as he should, just
Mm-hmm.
because of the condition that he has.
Well said. Well said. And yeah, both the performances are fantastic. And this movie it's basically a two character movie. I mean, we get a
Yeah.
little bit of Sophie in the present day, which is really just a small amount. And I thought it was interesting how that was effective, even though it was very sparse. Like we kind of just get an impression of like where she's at. She, is also about to have a kid or just recently had a
She
kid,
just had a kid.
just had a kid. So now, she's a mother. Maybe she's his age, and feeling the same things he was feeling. I mean, it's just very it just gives us enough detail to be like she's at a point in her life where she's reflecting and she's thinking about her dad. And
Right.
this is what she's thinking about, this trip. And like
Yes.
I will take you there. I will take the audience there.
Yeah. It is enough for you to understand what's happening. Although I do think that was really my only part of the movie where I wanted more. I think
Mhm, I
it's
think there could
just,
have been.
I think it's a little, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a little vague in that sense. And I think just like, and that's what I mentioned before. It's like 2% of the movie. And I would have
Yeah,
liked it to be like 10,
I think it could have been.
something like that. Just I don't even know if she speaks in present day. I'm not
I
kidding.
think
She
she's
might not.
briefly maybe to
To
her
her
partner
wife
or
or her
whatever.
partner.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe, but and I get what they're doing with it, and we don't need a lot more. I just wanted a little bit more because I felt like there was an opportunity there with like 5 more minutes of that for me to like really connect to the adult version of her as well, and I wasn't quite able to do that.
Hmm. Um, yeah, and then I guess the last thing I want to say too is I felt like, um, you know, maybe part of me thinks that I could have used a little more scenes at the resort just because it did such a good job of immersing me kind of in that trip and everything that I definitely would have been cool with like another day or whatever. But it's
Yeah.
also like it makes you feel kind of that melancholy feeling that you often get like at the end of family trips, especially when you're a kid. You know, like if it's like a 5 day trip, by the time it gets to like that fourth or fifth day, kind of the inevitability of the end of it, and kind of like well, we should do like one more fun thing, but then like before you know it, it's like time to go, and it's just like I feel like it captured that.
Very fine moment in the middle where you don't feel like you just got there anymore, and you're not thinking about leaving yet.
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of where most of this movie lives.
Yeah,
which is an accomplishment in itself, because it's usually a very small part of the trip. Although I think their trip is like 2 weeks long. So.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. Unless there's anything else, should we get to the stars? Or I guess, do we want to just talk about how the movie looks too? Because I felt like it's very interesting. It's not like over the top like a Siama type of, or like cinematography where it's just like over the top beautiful. No, it's kind of, there's the grainy kind of flashback scenes, and even the stuff that's just in the flashbacks, not like on video, is maybe a little like kind of soft and like, I don't know what the word, like almost like textured. Like it was filmed in a very like intimate kind of way, which I thought was very effective, in the camera work and everything. A lot of close up on the facial expressions, a lot of long lingering shots. I thought that was really great. There's one in particular where they're like taking a boat out somewhere to go like, was it like snorkeling or something, or just like swimming?
I think so.
And they're just like on the side of the boat looking out over the ocean, like beautiful day. And just kind of the shot just kind of hangs there for a while. Just like, isn't this nice? I'm like, yeah, it is.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Last thing I just wanted to mention is that this is Charlotte Wells's directorial debut. I always like to call those out when I'm aware of them, because I don't know, I think there's something cool about debuts. There's a school of thought out there that thinks no director will ever make a more pure movie than the first one that they make. If that's the case for Charlotte Wells, then I mean, she nailed it. I think this is a very, very impressive debut feature.
Agreed. All right, yeah, we'll take a break and then we'll get to the stars.
Yes, we will get to the stars in just a moment. Okay. You want to go first, or should I go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. I am going to give this a strong, solid, sturdy 4 stars. I thought this was really great. I think it could definitely go up to 4.5. I just need to see it again. I think that the movie is so kind of small and intimate, just following like these 2 characters pretty much, that, I don't know. I feel like I just would have needed a little more to get it up to like a 4.5 and a 5. It's almost too cozy, and the scope is too small for it to really like get to a 5, which is okay, kind of a built-in ceiling a little bit. But I thought it was very sweet and heartfelt, and I really love in particular the final shot of the movie. I thought was inspired and one of the best final shots that I've seen in a while. Definitely one of my favorites of the year, and I would like to see it again when I get the opportunity. Just because I've been thinking about it a lot since I saw the movie. So yeah, I'm just going to go solid 4 out of 5. Really great. Highly recommend for pretty much anybody if you like just good indie dramas.
Yeah, I'm pretty much going to echo all of that. Really, my only issue was just I wanted a little more of adult Sophie, to where she felt like an actual character. Yeah. But outside of that, great acting. It's beautifully written. Oh my God, the dance scene toward the end.
Oh yeah.
Is so touching. And the way it's sort of intercut with like the trip, and then kind of like the present day / maybe what's going on in her head kind of bit is really cool. And just kind of shatters all of it in like a really beautiful way of just like, okay, the memories are over now and you're back to real life. It's really, really well done. It's an incredibly impressive debut. I do really want to watch this again. And just like you, it's just kind of lived in my head for like 2 weeks. And that by itself is very impressive. We see a lot of movies here on this podcast. And I mean, especially like now I'm seeing like 5 new movies a week. And to have any that I'm still thinking about for like 2 or 3 weeks after I saw it is incredibly impressive. So I will watch this again, definitely before we do our top 10 of the year in January-ish.
Do we know when this is getting a wide release, or if?
Not really, no. I mean, I have a feeling it's just going to get its kind of little muted release that it's got right now and then show up on VOD soon-ish.
Okay.
So
and then maybe,
we'll see. I mean, right now in the Twin Cities, it's playing at one theater.
Okay, yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So, and that ends tomorrow or today when this episode comes out. It ends on November 9th. So, not a lot of opportunities to see this in the theater, but definitely something I strongly recommend for people to look out for once you can rent it on demand.
Agreed.
And maybe it will get a bigger release. Who knows?
I'd like to see that. Paul Mescal's performance deserves that.
I think so too.
All right. Well, unless there's anything else, I believe it's your turn to put a wrap on the show.
It is. Just a moment while I get all of our outro stuff and the quote up here.
It's my turn to stall while Nate...
clicking a lot of things. Okay, we are ready to go here. I can put a wrap on the show.
All right, take it away, Nate.
The past shouldn't be feared, for it guides our future.